Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3756. Today's date is 11th of December 2025. It's been almost like a night at exactly 9:56 p.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right, the question is: what if word could literally came to life? Words would literally came to life. Okay, it's a very unique in itself. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and experience that I have to kind of like creating this reality, and it somehow it felt good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Now, regarding about the question says that what if the words could literally came out live? What exactly is this? Like, first of all, this question is a kind of like a bit really fun, but I don't know. Yeah, why am I asking this kind of like such a question? I don't know. It's just like that. Na, ki sometimes na, I realize that ki asking kind of like a bigger question, it's somewhat something. I don't know how do I supposed to explain. If I kind of like say this thing, what is gravity lensing, or what is a black hole, and what is kind of like a scientific stuff, like basically if I construct the question regarding about all those big words regarding about telling the information about the universe and things and that, the people who kind of like read that particular question might feel like that, oh my boy, this question is a kind of like a really big ass and things like that, because there is a lot of kind of like so many words are included in itself. Why is that? Okay, yeah. And some question are kind of like something just very normal in itself that kind of like feel pathetic. Okay, yeah. If you're still not really understanding this thing, take this question. The question says that what if words could literally came into life? Now if I ask this question to any random person, okay, yeah, like basically tell me what if the words could literally came to life. Okay, yeah, then probably other person might gonna say that thing, why, what the fuck, what kind of a question is that? Okay, yeah, because it was kind of like a somebody, it sound little bit pathetic. Well, now why is that? Because like basically this is in a key, there are kind of like so many multiples of questions that we ask to anybody. Okay, yeah, but regarding about the question, we have to ask question regarding about what is actually common to us. Okay, yeah, we could talk about the government, we could talk about the society, we could talk about the planets and stars and things and that. But kind of like a hypothetical scenario, when we talk about such a thing like what if words could came literally into the life, then probably this kind of like assembly question really required a thought process and imagination and things like that. And people are not to utilize that thing. Okay, what exactly is this? What exactly is this question? It's not a kind of like a typical question where what is exactly 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. No, it's a kind of like assembly question where it's that ki why not 1 plus 3 is not 7. It is that. Okay, yeah. So I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing, but like such kind of like a question, I realize like I ask so many questions to myself, and I realize that ki when I ask kind of like such a basic hypothetical scenario question, I tend to know more regarding about like basically I try to think about such a very different point of perspective that I never really think like that. Like basically this thing couple of like basically before I kind of like a recording artifact, okay, last like earlier artifact, there is a question actually pop up that key which what if the kind of like assembly the number has its own emotion, what exactly kind of like a personality reflect by the number. Okay, like basically each number like 1 2 3 4 5 6. So what is exactly the personality of each number? And this is a kind of like a very weird question in itself, but it kind of like a feel really good. By the way, I kind of like interrupt, I kind of like end the artifact because I have kind of like a do some sort of work, so I didn't really record the entirely. But it's kind of like really fun to ask this question. Not only fun, but kind of like a just a kind of like a think about that point of perspective. It sounds a little bit like at the beginning, it sounds a little bit pathetic and things like that, but when I try to give the answer, I realize I'm kind of like a thinking from that point of perspective at first time. Like basically, I never really think about that point of perspective, never before. So it's a kind of like a unique in itself, right? Whatever. Okay, yeah. Let's just give the answer. Now, regarding about the answer, regarding about the question says that, what if words would literally came to life? Now, words could literally came to life means what? Means what? Let's just say that if I'm gonna say apple, then came to life means what? Like basically, if it came to like a double P L E came to life, like basically I could see the words in front of me, a double P L E apple. No. I'm thinking that probably it might gonna say, if I'm gonna say apple, means like that apple. Like literally came to life means like if I'm gonna say apple, then obviously there is an apple in front of me. Okay, so whatever I said, it came to life. Okay, yeah. So if such thing will gonna happen, okay, yeah, like whatever I say, not just whatever like anyone can say anything. Okay, yeah. It kind of like a pop up in midair. Okay, yeah. So basically, if such thing will gonna happen, then what would be that particular world? Well, when such thing will gonna happen, then there is a one thing is that we're gonna make sure that we should supposed to be shut up. Okay, yeah. First thing, we should supposed to be shut up, or maybe kind of like a seal the mouth. Probably the government will gonna kind of like a do something that seal gonna mouth by kind of like a stitching or things or that and that. Okay, yeah, you are not allowed to talk. Like basically, government will kind of like simply enforce us to not to talk. Yeah, literally not to talk, because we are holding such a power that if I could say anything and anything gonna pop up in midair. Okay, yeah. So government will gonna enforce us that you shouldn't supposed to talk. They're gonna use multiple ways to kind of like a seal our mouth or kind of like I don't know. Okay, the first thing that they kind of like do. Why does they do that? Because obviously the government have kind of like such a power. Sorry, the people have kind of like such a power. They will kind of like utilize that power for a very wrong reason, and that is true. People are actually when the power are actually given to the people actually utilize the power for very very wrong reason. Yeah, you cannot imagine that. Yeah, people are actually utilized for very wrong power, utilized for wrong purposes. Yeah, but what is exactly wrong purposes? Yeah, what is exactly this thing? Okay, yeah. Okay, imagine a scenario. Let's just say that there is a person who is kind of like doing a work for 9 to 5 job. Okay, yeah, he's frustrated, his things, life is really fuck and things like that, and suddenly he has a power that whatever he could say, it could pop up, and he would say, first of all, he say apple suddenly pop up in midair. He was bitterly curious. Then he kind of like said money. Then suddenly bunch of money came into his hand. He was like wow, like he think that he has power too. Okay, yeah. Now basically in this particular reality, everyone has this power. It's not really that the single person has this power. Everyone has its own power. Okay, yeah. So basically, if I'm gonna say money is money pop up, apple pop up. What if I could say something very dangerous? What would be that? Black hole. Yeah, I would say black hole. Like basically, I want to see black hole. So what will happen? Like basically pop up in midair. Like basically, if the black hole would be kind of like somebody created in front of me, dude. Like basically, I'm not kind of like imagine as a kind of like somebody planet-sized black hole. I'm kind of like thinking like let's just say a 2 feet wider black hole, just 2 feet wider black hole. which is equivalent to the size of our planet, because it holds the masses of equivalent to the size of entire planet of Earth, or more than that, which kind of like sucks the entire planet. I'm just kind of like creating just 5 feet of black hole. Okay, yeah, just 5 feet of black hole. Okay, not that much, kind of like equivalent to my height. Okay, which kind of like hold the mass of almost like an entire planet. So so probably if such thing I would kind of like say black hole, then just I will gonna suck into this thing. Okay, yeah, or maybe everyone will entire planet will gonna suck into that, and it gonna kind of like create an chaos and things like that. Yeah, right. So basically, it's this thing, na, ki if people have power, they will kind of utilize it for very very wrong perspective. So government has a kind of like one thing they would gonna do, they will kind of like shut up the people. Okay, yeah, but still, is this thing that it's not gonna possible, because as I mentioned, the power, everyone has its own power. Like basically, if the government shut the people will gonna say, people will gonna kind of like say that thing ki, like I can speak without my lips. Okay, so if such thing will gonna happen, then probably if you, even if the government kind of like seal the lips, still he could speak, because yeah, there is a lot of kind of like some chaos will gonna happen, and that is really really not good thing. Okay, yeah, but still, let's just imagine that ki the people are very civilized and people are understanding that ki no, we shouldn't supposed to be say such thing like that, so we should supposed to be shut up. So people might gonna cooperate, people might gonna do this thing, but not all the people, dude. Definitely not. Like let's just say, like basically a really good mind of people, they would understand the civilized and authenticity and kind of like make sure that ki shouldn't supposed to be happened wrong. The number of the people are existed 10 out of 2. Yeah, like 10 out of 8 people still wanted to do mess up things. So it's a very very difficult in itself. Okay, yeah, because they have hold the power and things like that, so which is really not good thing. Okay, yeah, I am actually thinking about couple of things. Okay, yeah, if such thing will gonna power I have, like if I'm gonna say something and kind of like it appear in midair, like it just appear, like there is no value at all. Okay, like basically money and anything, it just doesn't really at all. Like probably is this thing na ki, I don't know, dude, yeah, it's like that na ki I realize myself, I also being human too. Okay, yeah, when you get things so easily, you don't really have any values. Okay, yeah, like let's just say that ki if I'm gonna say Bugatti Veyron, suddenly Bugatti Veyron pop up in my head, pop up in front of me, and I don't really have the value for this thing. Let me give you perspective. Okay, yeah, like basically is this thing, if you are a kind of like a person who is kind of like doing a job and your mobile phone is broken. Okay, yeah, your mobile phone is not actually working out. Okay, yeah, now you wanted to buy new mobile phone. So when you wanted to buy new mobile phone, you do research, you kind of like make the budget, do the research, what kind of like a phone should I supposed to be needed. You kind of like wait for phone for kind of like some sale price or things for that and that, and after almost like a 2-3 months, you kind of like do the research, kind of like make sure that money is kind of like a managed and things like that, and then you buy kind of like a very simple phone, not really luxury, just kind of like a very mid-range phone. You feel really good when you hold that particular phone. You feel that yeah, it's worth of that phone. Like basically this thing, it's just a simple thing. Okay, and you probably experience that thing. It's not really that you don't really experience. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing na, ki when you put effort and when you try to achieve that thing, the achievement feels achievement. It felt like that wow. Like basically is this thing na, if you're not really understanding this thing, I am highly recommend to climb the mountain. Okay, yeah, not the kind of like a big mountain. Okay, any kind of like a mountain. Okay, yeah, any kind of like a mountain. There are a couple of mountains. There are trekking is actually happen to climb the mountain. Okay, yeah, take your friends with yourself and kind of like a climb the mountain. Okay, yeah, when you climb the mountain, when you reach the top of the mountain, you feel really good that you actually achieve something. Okay, obviously you didn't really achieve anything at all. You just kind of like went into the top of the counter or top of the mountain, but you feel really good that you kind of like feel that hey, I did something, and that kind of like something hold its own value in itself. Because when we try to put effort and then we achieve things, the value of that thing is much more. Okay, yeah. And now if I'm gonna say things and it kind of like a pop up in midair, it doesn't really have any value. Even if I'm get millions of cars or trillions of kind of like money and things, it just nothing at all, dude. Nothing really at all. Because let me tell you one thing now, we matter, like we are humans, okay, yeah, and we are value for things that we want, and we for the effort and things like that. Okay, and this is what it is. This is what kind of like a thing is that's why expensive things are way more expensive, is because of that they are not meant for everybody. And that's why it kind of like creates in its own value, and that's why it kind of like creates its own value when the people try to achieve that thing. Then people kind of like feel that, oh, 100 out of I am the one person who could afford this Lamborghini, so that's why I'm buying this Lamborghini. And when I buy this thing, it kind of like give me a value of that particular ownership. It give me value that yes, I am the owner of this Lamborghini car. So this is what it is, dude. This is what kind of like something that we drive from us. And because of this thing now, we are kind of like a develop. Okay, look at around yourself, the cars and buildings and things and that. What exactly is this thing? Is the people who want to achieve something, they wanted to put effort and try to make their life become better. So that's why we are kind of like build this world around us. Okay, so basically is this thing now, if everything is actually pop up in mid-air, we don't really have anything value. We are not satisfied with anything at all. Like whatever in front of you, million trillion amount of money is just worthless. Nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So probably if we are not putting any kind of, if we are not getting satisfaction from things that we achieve, then probably, I don't know. Okay, yeah. Because of this thing, whatever you could say, it kind of like appear mid-air, then I don't know what you were gonna say and things like, I don't know, it's just like why do you supposed to make effort and things like that? Definitely not. I am gonna tell you one experience. It's not an experience, by the way. It's a kind of like a reality. Okay, yeah. I am belong to the India. Okay, yeah. Specifically, I am belong to the Maharashtra. Okay, yeah. Now Maharashtrian government are kind of like play something very dirty politics. Okay, yeah. Now what's a dirty politics? A dirty politics means like that ki they want vote from people, and how they do that, they are kind of like somebody giving them people a free money, and that's a very wrong thing. Okay, yeah. Okay, let me give you the context of entire thing. Belong to the Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, there is I'm not going to mention the name. Okay, yeah. If you remember, if you know, then you know. I'm not going to mention the name. Some of the politician in the Maharashtra who wanted to become a chairman, chief minister, CM. Okay, yeah. And what he did is that he kind of like somebody announced that all the women in Maharashtra will get free money. Yeah, legitly free money. Like basically 3,000 rupees something for free money directly in their bank account. Okay, yeah. Government are actually kind of like assembly give them a kind of like assembly this thing that because of that women should supposed to be participation, and women should supposed to be kind of like give the votes to that particular person. Okay, yeah. Now basically this thing, like what's wrong in that thing? Okay, yeah. Like if the kind of like assembly, the politics are kind of like assembly giving them free money to the people, then what's wrong in that thing? Okay, yeah. What's wrong in that thing? Let me give you the perspective. Okay, yeah. We are putting effort. Okay, yeah. We are doing a job. We are kind of like putting effort for things. Why? For money, right? yeah, money is somewhat something really essential. I'm not saying is that ki money is essential. It can solve almost like a 90% of your problem. Okay, yeah, it kind of like a somebody gives you things to kind of like a somebody survive, and money is really essential and things like that. Okay, so we are putting effort for money, right? So basically this thing, if I get free money, then why do I need to put effort? Yeah, why do I need to put effort? This is completely wrong thing, na? Now basically is this thing, then you ask this question that ki, then why do we effort? Why do we put the effort? Yeah, like basically if the government is kind of like giving us money, a free money, then what's wrong in this thing? Why do I supposed to put effort and things like that? Well, that's the wrong thing. Okay, let me tell you the perspective. Let me tell you thing. Okay, the money that you have, the money that you are holding, or money that you know, like a paper money, it's not, it's just a paper. It's just a paper. It doesn't, it does not hold anything at all. Okay, the money that you are kind of like holding it right now, or have money that you have, it's a promise from the government to you. Okay, it actually written on your money, on money. It's actually written like मैं धारक को विश्वास देता हूँ कि ये नोट like something कि उसे इस्तेमाल करने की अनुमति देता हूँ, something like that. It's a kind of like a promise. Means like that the money is just a piece of paper, but it kind of like hold the promise to the government that ki government are kind of like authorized to you, or kind of like simply giving hope, or kind of like things that ki kind of like you can spend that money and you can buy that stuff. Okay, yeah. So the basically the money that you are holding, it's not nothing at all. It's just a promise. It's just a promise. Okay, yeah. Now where is that promise? Like what is that this thing? If you not really relate with that thing, let me try to simplify it as simple as possible as it can. Okay, so let's just say that ki like basically I wanted to go to the club. The entry of that going to the club is, let's just say, 2,000 rupees. Okay, 2,000 rupees, but I don't have that much amount of money, but I wanted to enter in that club. But one of my friend who's actually working in this club, and he says, don't worry dude, okay, yeah, like I will gonna enter you. So what exactly happened, that I went to that club and my friend is also working there, so he let me in. Okay, yeah, so I enter to the club free. I entered the club free. I don't really kind of need money. And basically why this actually happened, because of my friend is actually giving me promise that I can able to go into the club, and I went there, right? So it's a kind of like simply just a promise, kind of like somebody, that promise is kind of like somebody, that promise is kind of like somebody get me something, right? So this is what kind of like a thing, this is what kind of like a government promises to kind of like somebody you could spend that money and things like that. Now basically that promise is kind of like comes from growth of the country. Okay, yeah, literally growth of the country. Like basically is this thing, if your government is kind of like doing something really good, and because of good means what, good means like that like a GDP. Okay, usually the growth of the country determined by the GDP, gross domestic, GDP gross domestic P gross wait, I just forget the what is actually word for GDP. Wait, okay, GDP, gross domestic product. Okay, and gross domestic product. Okay, yeah, so basically the country's growth is actually determined by the GDP. Okay, there are multiple ways to determine by the growth, there are multiples of variation, but the most kind of like assembly is this thing, most parameter are GDP. Okay, yeah. Now GDP is actually based on the growth, means like that ki how much product that created by this country in one single year. Now product means what? A product means like that a kind of like a product, a car, a mobile phone, or anything that manufacture in your country, okay, or service or things like that. Okay, yeah. So because of this thing, it kind of like assembly that you could sell and things, and so that it could kind of like consider as a growth. Example, let's just take an example, is this thing, you are a farmer. Okay, you are a farmer, and you kind of like assembly you farm, let's just say 100 tomatoes. Okay, yeah. So your GDP, let's just say 1%. Look, let's just say like normal. Okay, normal. But next year, next month, you kind of like a grow, let's just say 120 tomato, 120 tomato. So that means you 20 tomato extra growth in that particular single month. So probably your GDP, let's just say 20%. Okay, yeah. Next month you took even more further. You took like you grow almost like a 140 tomato. So probably your growth is 40. Okay. In like for the normalization, 100 tomato is had enough, but you are kind of like a growing more. Okay, yeah. So when you grow more, it kind of like somebody is this thing that key because of you are kind of like somebody making more tomato. So that's why you are gonna make more money too. Okay, because you're gonna sell that tomato to this somebody and things like that. So you're gonna make more. Same thing, same concept is actually happened with the country level, but country level is a bit more complicated because country is not just produce the product, it kind of like a produces services. Lot of things are actually involved in this thing. Okay, yeah. Now that product or that services is actually came from the people. Okay, means people who could kind of like go into the kind of like somebody do a job and kind of like make that product. From that product, kind of like somebody GDP will gonna kind of like somebody rise up and things like that, right? So if this Maharashtrian politician would kind of like somebody say this thing that ki, if I will give you money for free, then people will not gonna do a work. Now if the people will not gonna do a work, then probably people will not gonna make the product. So people will not gonna make the product, the GDP of the country will kind of like a downfall. As I mentioned, is this thing that the farmer put the effort to make 140 tomato, they might gonna make, let's just say 80 tomato. Okay, yeah, like 20 less. Okay, like basically the initial tomato shoot supposed to need is 100 tomato, but that particular person made 80 tomato. Okay, why? Because the government actually giving them money. So why he put the effort? So he didn't really put the effort and he makes only 80 tomato. So as I mentioned, is this thing that people are not making the product, then GDP is actually downfall. The GDP is actually downfall, then promise to the government, to the promise that kind of like says this thing that कि मैं धारक को ये करता हूँ कि ये नोट की कीमत रहेगी वगैरह वगैरह. So it's not gonna valuable. So inflation will gonna happen. Inflation means like that कि probably the prices of the product is kind of like a more. Why? Because the very less product are actually available. Okay, yeah, because the farmer who could make 140 tomato, right now he is making 80 tomato. So basically is this thing having less amount of product, that means more amount of price that you should supposed to be pay. Inflation will gonna happen. The inflation will gonna happen, then probably is this thing that it's just not worth it. Okay, yeah. So basically this kind of like a subsidy, this kind of like a giving them free money is not really good thing. Okay, yeah. But let me tell you one thing. It's not meant to be that ki government cannot able to kind of like give them people to free. No, you can give them couple of things for free too. Okay, yeah. Example is this thing that let's just say if the government are actually giving free gas cylinder to the people, then probably this is really good subsidy. Why? Because of this thing that in India mostly people are actually kind of like utilizing chulha. What's a chulha? Chulha is a kind of like a fire for cooking the food and things like that. Okay, yeah. And because of this thing, we kind of like make the fire, they kind of like create the pollution. Okay. Also, the mostly women are kind of like making those kind of like a fire for cooking things, and that it kind of like badly affect health on them too. Okay, yeah. So because of this thing, you kind of like offering them free LPG cylinder. When you offering them free LPG cylinder, you are actually solve both problem. First of all, air pollution, and another thing, you are kind of like somebody solving the problem of that particular woman will not gonna kind of like somebody from health. You are actually kind of like protecting her health because the things and that. So when this thing actually happened, she will not gonna get sick. When she will not gonna get sick, her husband can go to the office and kind of like make the product and things like that, so that it kind of like somebody make the more product, GDP will improve and kind of like yeah. So get it? So basically is this thing, if the government is actually kind of like providing some sort of thing, do not provide just a money, because money is not a product. Money is just promise. Okay. And when you kind of like sell the promise, it kind of like a downgrade our system economy. So it's not really good thing. If the government actually providing a LPG gas cylinder, like basically such a thing, such a commodity that added something value in their life. Okay, yeah. So it kind of like a really help them. Not only help them, but it kind of like a solve multiple problems at once. Right? So as I mentioned is this thing, regarding about the question says that what if I could say, and it could literally pop up in midair. It does not work. Life would be end, the destruction, chaos, probably end of human civilization. Because God knows what people will gonna say. If I go to say nuclear bomb, yeah, the fat fat man, the fat man, there is a nuclear bomb is actually detonate on the Nagasaki. Okay, yeah, fat man would kind of like a pop up in my head, pop up in front of me, or maybe Tsar bomb. Like Tsar is a kind of like one of the biggest nuclear bomb made by Russian. Pop up in front of me, and I would gonna detonate like a firecracker. Dude, God knows what will gonna happen, right? So yeah, and people are so crazy regarding about their imagination. They could say anything and they would kind of like do anything. All right. So this is my answer regarding over this question. All right. So this is it. I have to end here, and thank you.